You sit together on a management team meeting. Okay, we need more revenue. We need new products. We need to make our customers happy. Then you have a group of 6 people. Time is limited, 3 hours. We do some brainstorming. We make a nice idea, put into action, and no one knows if it does make any sense. No one knows if it fits to the customer. No one knows how we can attract new users.
Coming right at you. PM Cowboy Podcast.
Yes, hello and welcome everybody it's a great honor to host our podcast today with Mark. Great to have you here in our podcast. Today we're going to have 2 very specific topics. On one hand is how to make the best Wiener Schnitzel, which is really an art as such. And the second topic we're going to cover is how much beer you can drink in the famous Schweizerhaus here in Vienna. That's going to be the topic for the next 68 hours, which we'll spend together, Mark, and I'm really looking forward.
Same here.
Really looking forward.
So that's a small taste of our very special guest that we have with us today. Hi, this is Mark, your PM Cowboy. Actually, we don't just have one PM Cowboy. We rarely do on our podcast. We have 2. Alexander Kagl, who is an old-time friend, colleague in the profession of project process, leadership, communication, and the hot topic that we're going to be talking about today is design thinking.
So no Wiener Schnitzel.
No Wiener Schnitzel. We'll do that afterwards.
Great.
One of the missions of our podcast is to have interesting content where we discuss different management and leadership principles and kind of dissect them. We kind of want to have a constructive but irreverent conversation about it. What is it? Does it make sense? Do I need it? Who's doing it? When do I do it? Why do I do it? All that kind of stuff. And like I said, I know Alexander for a very, very long time. He's got a great sense of humor. I think one of his main functions is to make sure that this is not too serious of a podcast. But we want to talk about design thinking, what it is, and what it's good for. Do you need it? I think is the question we want to ask.
Yes, I do.
Yes, good. You have to convince them.
Yes, you do.
Good. Alexander, we always start off our podcast by saying, how do we know each other? I've covered that. But talking a little bit about, give it a fancy word, a design thinking word. We call it the passion journey. Tell our viewers a little bit of who you are. It's kind of based on the principle, if you watch podcasts, it always annoys me if I don't know who's talking. Tell the people who you are.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I just found out recently it's more than 20 years since we know each other.
Nobody wants. I think it's longer than 20 years.
More than 20, yeah. 22, 23, something like this.
Yeah, it's around 20, 22, somewhere in that area.
So our friendship survived the generation, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it says about you that you're still friends with me after that much time, but...
Okay, let's start with my passion journey, and you drink your coffee and have fun. Yes, great honor and great pleasure to be here. My name is Alex, really, really great here. I did industrial engineering and management at the Technical University in Vienna a couple years ago.
Longer than we know each other?
Longer than we know each other. And there I kind of fell into the love of passion, of processes, of projects, of course, in creating things and actually mixing industrial engineering and management and all those things together. I worked quite some time in Boston, which was really, really great.
Great city, yeah.
Yeah, nice time, great city, quite European city from my perspectives, where I worked.
That's why it's called New England.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of got a crossover feeling. Yeah. Really nice. So what did you do in Boston? You worked in a consulting firm, right?
I worked in a consulting firm, yes. I had great seafood there, which was really, really nice. And I really fell in love.
Lobster?
Yes. Actually, I got poisoned by lobster. How do you say that? The Eiweißvergiftung? Protein.
Yeah, you have a protein overdose, yeah.
Yeah.
It happens. Did you get the hives?
Yeah, it was cool. A friend of mine there had a boat and we went out for fishing and we collected 17 lobsters.
That'll do it.
And yeah, but it was really nice. So back to the serious stuff.
Stay serious here, damn it.
Sorry.
What type of consulting did you do in Boston?
Actually, it was a consulting company, and I supported and guided the company. They explored and they got bigger, and they just had 400 employees when we started, and a year later they were 2,500.
Okay, so you were kind of with organizational development?
Organizational development, change management. They established 4 new spots where to set up the business. So I was part of this journey in operational part, in change part, project part, of course.
Okay.
It's really nice, yeah.
And I think you mentioned beforehand it was focused on SAP implementation.
Yes.
Okay. Which is interesting because the topic that we're talking about, there's a
link somehow.
Somehow to one of the founders of SAP. He was also a big proponent of the design thinking model.
Yes, that's true. Also Plattner was very famous in that. Yeah.
Before you went to Boston, you also worked, I think, in the Styria, which is a state in Austria.
Yes, we call it Carinthia.
Oh, Carinthia, you weren't at Steiermark, I thought.
No, it's a Canton, for a production company. And I was kind of a project manager there. It was those days not so well defined, to be honest. Actually supporting in setting up an ERP system. There was an ISO certification. There was also those days for the company was focusing and very much into producing bracelets for watches.
Okay.
And then Nokia those days came up and said, yes, for the personalized handy covers, which were actually pre-printed and then like tiefgezogen, however you call it.
I have no idea what the heck that is. Google it.
Yeah, so flat plastic, and then you heat it up, and then you put it down in the molding.
Molding, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And they were personalized, and then you had the challenge to say, right, if you put your picture on this, and then you mold it.
Okay.
Where are your eyes, and so.
So this is actually a little bit a precursor to what we're going to be talking about. Yeah?
Yes, somehow. Yes, it was about users' experience and expectations from users at the end.
And how to be creative and create a unique selling proposition. Okay.
Yeah. Then after Boston, I jumped to a pharmaceutical company based in Vienna.
Okay.
International one, where we focused on logistic projects in how to make sure to have on-time delivery for medicine against blood poisoning. Okay. Actually.
Yeah.
So it was the Lieferando of those days for.
Okay. So also kind of a crossover between process management, product management, project management, and design thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Then I had a short stop in a consulting company, and then years ago we founded our own company.
Yeah.
Dynect, so it's 19 years ago, and started very much focusing on project management, organizational development, change management. Step by step, of course, one of the focus areas was on how to make sure that customers are on board, users are on board, and then the design thinking approach developed, and I jumped into this topic and
we did a German version of this beforehand, and one of the benefits of doing it a second time is that we can add things that we didn't think. Actually, we have another crossover point. Besides the fact that we've known each other and been friends for a long time, we've been working together in the area of project and program and portfolio and PMO management. A lot of clients that we shared and took care of together. We're kind of a good tag team when it comes to that.
Yep.
We also have another past, which is kind of goes into the topic of design thinking. We were involved in PMI and founding PMI in Austria.
You were actually founder of PMI,
and
you remained president for 10 years, which is really, really great.
Yeah,
and it took over.
And he was smart enough or stupid enough to take over after me. But actually, I think if we're because we don't want to just explain design thinking from an academic perspective. We want to put it kind of in a context so that people can feel it. I think. If I think in hindsight, we did some really aggressive design thinking back then because there was all sorts of resistance or disbelief that there was any need for what we were doing. And we had actually a very strong positive feedback from the market that we were spot on. Although everybody said, that's not going to work.
Great events we did together, the Tool Time and the Portfolio Management Summit. And
I mean, the largest, the first event we did had 190 participants, and the very last one that I was involved in, we had over 1,200 people over 2 days, 36 expert tracts, 4 expert seminars involved. So it was
really nice.
We did a lot of I think that's a good also starting point to talk about design thinking. So that's our background. You started with the formalistic understanding. It's interesting because you said you started with project management without a formal understanding. In the meantime, you're certified and a senior expert on it. You some years ago, you've been doing. Look. This is, I think, one important thing. Most of us have been doing some version of design thinking.
Anyway. That's if you have some little parts of empathy left in your mindset.
If you have a couple gray brain cells that you can rub against each other, but just like with project management, what is the advantage of saying, okay, let's give it formal vocabulary and a formal framework? What's the advantage of that? Why should somebody be listening to this podcast and say, hey, I can learn something from a more formal process?
First of all, they have to listen because it's
it's us two talking.
It's us two talking. So
yeah.
And we'll try to make this simultaneously.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We're waiting on the beer, but we'll drink the coffee in the meantime.
Nice pale ale. Actually, the reason is that design thinking very often is misunderstood. Because first of all, it's about design. Does not mean it's about product design, so how to design this beautiful cup. So it's really about designing experiences and designing things at the end of the day. And it says design thinking. In general, thinking is not a bad idea. Just to keep on thinking is quite a good approach in life general. So, but to have a framework is especially interesting and relevant to have a clear understanding and a focus on users. Because what happens in practice, you sit together on a management team meeting, okay, we need more revenue, we need new products, we need to make our customers happy. Then you have a group of 6 people, time is limited, 3 hours, we do some brainstorming, we make a nice idea, put into action, and no one knows if it does make any sense, no one knows if it fits to the customer, no one knows how we can attract new users. It's just a lot of
Nobody's asked the user if we're delivering something that they want.
Yeah. Yes.
So
users overrated.
Go ahead.
No, so please.
I just want to underline what you said because I don't want to. You said it so fluidly and it's so succinct, but I think it might pass over some people. You mentioned that design thinking, a lot of people if they look at the word design, they think of the shape of this, the shape of this, the features, the function, which is kind of also an agile thing. Agile, there's design thinking in UX. We covered this in German, right? What's UX?
User experience.
Is it anything different than design thinking?
There's CX as well.
There's CX to confuse.
Yeah, it's about experience, create experience and look and feel. And
de facto, it's the same. It's in the same boat.
It's in the same boat, but it's just another rower in the boat.
Okay. So what I think is important to understand is when we're talking about design thinking, we're not talking about classical, I'm an architect and I want to make a beautiful building. That might be part of the user experience. Yeah. But the real value, and I think this is where it's important in the agile context, because UX and design thinking are often brought into the area of agile project management. And agile project management, one of its strengths is requirement engineering. This goes beyond requirement engineering. It doesn't say, listen, I'm not just interested in your features. I'm actually more interested in the human connection.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's the user experience that's at the focus of design thinking.
Because who's designing and defining features, who is defining requirements, most of the time it's not the user. Most of the time and design thinking really makes a difference between users and customers. Because customers are the one that pay for something, but users are people that just do not currently pay for something. They just use some services. Okay, for example, at the if you ride the highway, you have your rest areas here from the Asfinag in Austria. You're not a customer of that actually. I mean, yes, you pay via your taxes, but at the end of the day, you're using the services they provide there. And is it clean? Is it nice? Is it whatever it is? It's an experience you get.
Is it big enough? Does it provide space? Does it have bathrooms? Does it cover the basic needs?
Can I fill up my water reservoirs? Whatever there is, there's a need for. So it says it's not about customers, it's about user focus. And user focus not in terms of asking the users, because most of the time users cannot express their needs because I just don't know what I want. This is normal life. So it's really about observing, making interviews, shadowing, and try to find out what are hidden demands, hidden beliefs, hidden pains, and to work on those topics.
What you're talking about, I think one of the big dilemmas that we face as product managers, as senior managers and executives who have to design products and services, and also project managers who then ultimately have to deliver the product. I think one of the biggest things that breaks my heart a little bit, and one of the questions I like to ask project managers, you do the same thing when we go and consult them, is when we do the stakeholder analysis, the number one stakeholder that's ignored on a project is the end user. Because we have this focus on in German we say the Auftraggeber, we have the sponsor, internal, external, right? We have people who pay for the project. And I often ask the project manager, do you actually have access to the end user? Do you even know
who it is?
Is it one? Is it multiple personas, right? And they often look at me like, no, I've got a boss here, and the boss told me what I want, and he wants a black box that's a meter wide, a meter high, a meter deep, right? I'm delivering, and we say in French we say après moi le déluge, nach mir die Sintflut, after me the flood. That's not good project management, and I think most project managers would love to have a connection to the end customer, but for all sorts of reasons, that's not facilitated, right?
True.
And design thinking creates a possibility to kind of change that paradigm shift, right? To make a paradigm shift and say, no, success is defined by multiple things, and ultimately it's defined by the end user. And if we in project management and product management are not aware of this, then we have an issue, right?
Yes, true. And not only about the end user, it's also about potential users. We're currently not knowing that they become users at all for us.
Yeah. So people that we haven't even thought of, where we can. So I think this is another thing we need to dispel is the myth in design thinking. Oh, this is another tedious, expensive process where I'm going to spend a bunch of money, more money than I want to, which will increase my overhead but not increase my margin. Quite the contrary, right? Design thinking is meant to make you creative in the sense, how can I create more value with just a little bit more effort? Or
how can I create more value with a little effort? Yes. And how can I get more security that the result is really working in the fields, working in the practice, and that the end users, customers, whatever you call them, say, yes, that's a good idea. I have not even thought about that. And design thinking also is very much focusing on solving problems which are not in a normal way expressed like this. And this could be day-to-day problems. For example, all of us, we know how to check in a hotel. Sometimes it works smoothly. Sometimes you queue up with 58,365 tourists. It takes an hour just to take in. Then you write down what you have done in booking.com anyway. Then you have the credit card and you have to check out again. It's a painful process.
They want you to manually fill out a piece of paper, although you've stayed at this whole hotel 20 times and they should have you in the system.
Yeah, I just want to get my shower and the beer and that's it. And that's like something where you can say, right, how can we make this process much smoother, for example? Could be issues like now McDonald's is jumping on that actually on the countryside, that in small rural areas a lot of coffees are now closing and elderly people do not have a place to go for their 5 o'clock coffee. Okay, so McDonald's now has the McCafe and there's sometimes special offer places and things around that. They serve you. So to get those people attracted to McDonald's in this case.
I think McDonald's in many ways, whether you like them or not, is an interesting example of a lot of these practices because they're willing to be creative. I mean, most people say when they think of McDonald's, they think of burgers, and they saw the success. So Starbucks kind of copied the McDonald's model in the United States by having like literal outlets with drive-thrus where you get your coffee. And McDonald's says, you're going to copy us, watch us, we're going to copy you, because we can offer the same coffee, sometimes even better coffee for a cheaper price. It goes both ways. So that's that creative process is to understand that products and services go through dynamic social acceptance or criteria that by which we say, hey, what's the experience? What are our needs? It can change. And if you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to be creative, you can't stay on top of the game.
There we go. And society is changing, demands is changing, it's changing much faster and faster. We see all these generation discussions and home office, no office, stay office, whatever. So yes, there's a huge demand in a fast adopting business actually at the end of the day, which only works if I have a really understanding about the users and if I'm able to do a rough and rapid prototyping, which does not mean IT things. It means to have one affiliate testing something, one hotel to test something. So a fast prototyping, a fast testing, and an agile iterative check. Hey, does it make sense or not? Does it add value or not? Is it sustainable or not? and if not,
yeah. You said something really. Second thing, which is really, really important, which you need to make sure that you hear is yes, IT, because it is so dominant in the project and agile, and also partly in the design thinking world. You underline the fact that design thinking is not something that is exclusively or predominantly used in IT.
Yes,
it can be used anywhere, and it doesn't have to be a physical product. It can be the service experience is also part of the design thinking.
Yes,
right?
Like a check-in process, for example. Yes, perfect.
For those companies out there who say, okay, you're kind of getting my attention, maybe my interest, does my industry need this kind of thinking? Can you think of industries, for example, banking, that's struggling with how are we serving the customer? Are we still relevant? Can you think of industries where this would be in particular as an example? If you like, we can start off with the banking. I mean, what's the or another situation?
Like banking. I mean, the banking business has changed. It's not about just the money anymore.
Yeah.
So banks need to survive in a competing market, actually, and all these online banks and so on. So at the end of the day, it's about creating new services, and now it's about services and not only products. Yes, there are a lot of products like special things, wherever there is. But yes, it's about services. For example, Erste Bank in Austria did this on focusing very much on the startup scene and founder scene to really support startups from the very first beginning in getting extra money, in providing legal support, in
providing consulting,
in business case calculation support, in getting extra funds, etc. To really make sure that the organization, that the company, the startup actually, from the very first start throughout the lifetime is going to be successul, and the bank is part of this journey. Actually,
well, you're actually part of that initiative, right? You're a mentor in that process.
A mentor and also one of the masterminds there, where it's about designing and setting up this startup.
So do you have that kind of you have those glasses on when you're looking at when somebody makes a pitch, you look at it and you say, that design, the product design or the service design could probably be tweaked a little bit, and
Yes, and very much. I mean, I know it myself. I established a vineyard as well. So it's at the end of the day, you start when establishing a company, you like it, right? It's a bunch of friends. You're happy, you're passionate, and say, we love it. But that just that you love it does not mean that 8 billion people around you love it. And that's now the service design.
I want to go back to
design thinking approach. Yeah.
I want to go back to that original statement that I made is what kind of industry would need it? And I think probably the industries that should be most interested in design thinking are the traditional ones.
The traditional ones that deal with end customers.
Yeah. And where they're noticing that the natural progression of economies reduces margins, increases costs, changes the way customers behave. There's commoditization of their product. There's competition, and I think the classical MBA, Master of Business Administration approach to efficiency and effectiveness in business is to cut costs and to always look at it from a quantitative perspective. And design thinking is an alternative to that. It says, listen, for example, I'll give you a concrete example. I think one of the things that it hurts me a little bit is that banks all over the world and also in Europe have found the number one, and everybody's copying each other, the number one way to improve your P&L, right, your profit loss, is they're closing branches, right? Because they said, we don't need branches. It's an overhead and we can reduce it. I think that's kind of a quantitative solution and a lazy solution that doesn't sufficiently take design thinking into play.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Go ahead.
When was the last time you were at the branch? At the bank office?
I'm usually I have two banks that I go to. My main one, I only go maybe every 2 weeks. And the secondary bank, I go about once a week.
Okay. Physically, you go there.
And I would say this, I would probably go more often if they really understood their core business. I think most banks have forgotten what their core business, or their core business doesn't work like it used to, and now they're so confused they don't know how to activate it. I personally think that banks are still relevant, but they have to deep dive on their core principles And I don't think enough of them are doing that.
Yeah.
You and I do a lot of work in Albania.
Yes.
And they have an interesting design thinking approach to their banks. They kind of did a cultural thing. Albanians love to eat and drink, and they're very sociable people, wonderful people.
And we love chofta as well.
Yeah, we love chofta and the ceviche and the different food there. Great. But what the banks did there, since Albanians love to sit outside in lounges and drink coffee and have conversations, a lot of the banks in the afternoon will have like music and coffee and stuff like that, which they figure, you know what, if we're going to have a location, if we want to activate it and make it relevant, make it part of the community, it doesn't necessarily sell direct products.
No, but you are in the bank, you're aware of the bank logo, you have the ATM there, maybe you put in some money, cash in, cash out, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that banks in particular, I think they do a lot of design thinking in the IT area, but not enough in their actual experience.
Yes.
And other industries, for example, have learned this. For example, bakeries or supermarkets, right? They understand they don't reduce their outlets. Bakeries and supermarkets know that a person has a trust relationship, and they're only willing to walk, I forget what the 200 meters, 300 meters to get there. And they'll go to the supermarket that's closest. And I think banks are losing that, you know? Yeah. The excuse is, everybody's doing things online. Yes, that's a user experience that's positive. I can do a lot of things online from my desk. But
question could be what other services can be provided from the bank you cannot do online, and where maybe you need and request some consultancy and some support, which can also be done online, of course, but still there is a huge segment of the population who does not want to do a consultancy about your insurance, a consultancy about your real estate loan, etc. online. You want to sit in front of a person, have a coffee, discuss the things, and that's it.
We want banking is like many products is based on trust. We want to know our bank representative. It should be the same one. We should have trust. When we ask questions, should get answers and not get the answer I don't know or no, right? So these are things. So that's where design thinking. I think design thinking is really the Rettungsring, we say in German, the kind of the tool that can help.
How is it in English?
I can't think of it. That's the life ring, the life-saving ring that you throw as somebody who's trying to save somebody in the water. But I think in particular for traditional organizations that are going into the 21st century that are facing challenges of new behaviors on the market, also new technologies, I think the focus shouldn't just be on, hey, let's create more apps. That's one part of it. But let's not forget about the human factor as well, right?
Yes, definitely. And human factor is not human factor. That's a difference. If you are 17, just get your own money, first own money, or you are 87, struggling with daily life, still want to enjoy different behaviors. So that's also one reason why you asked before, what's design thinking for? It's of making a difference of the users. Yes, it's not the user, the customer as a stakeholder in a project, and that's it. There is no the customer. It's so many different characters, different personas, different needs, different pains, different gains, different life stories, and different futures, where we as an organization, if we want to work on design thinking and we want to be better than the others, have to focus on
it means creating a blend or mixture of different products and services that just covers a broader spectrum of potential clients, right?
Yes, a blend on one hand, but also to really sharpen key pillars of your products, features of your services to a designated area. Yes.
So let's say I'm CEO of a traditional company. I don't know, I produce steel or widgets or whatever it might be. We've been in business for a long time and we're facing certain challenges from cheaper markets and difference in behavior. And I want to know a little bit about design. How can design thinking, is this something that would work with me? You don't just train design thinking, you're also a consultant, you kind of guide and mentor.
Yes.
Tell our viewers a little bit about how a scenario of where a client might call you and what you do. What's the process that you kind of go through with them?
Customer can call us and say, yes, we need more money, we have an issue, we need new products. We are starting to die out, actually. Please help us.
Okay.
So first step is always to get some facts and figures. Okay, so just we're dying out requires facts and figures. What's the issue to get a real understanding about the problem? And then typically this, and although it's agile, it somehow has to be kind of project character, of course, to say, right, for a certain period of time, let's say 6 to 8 months, for example, how much are we willing to invest in terms of resources, in terms of money, and how open are we to actually find out new ideas and new things? And then you can just start to clustering. So first part is to really understand the problem, the need, the strategy of the organization, which focus is currently existing, so really get an understanding. And now if you talk about a shoe brand, for example, who says, yes, we get rid of our customers, there are no customers anymore, in general, because everyone buys online. Still a question could be, how can we attract our branch or our affiliate actually for a certain target group, maybe for the elderly people, to be more attractive? So second question and second topic is to say, right, this is now a clear problem, a clear mandate to work on this. Then it's about to understand now this target group, to build up empathy and to understand how do they work, how do they behave, what do they think, what's their reaction, what is their life, what's around them. So really get a deep understanding and understand about pains and topics and challenges they have that from first step have nothing to do with our business, for example.
Who do you interact with at this first stage? It's not just executives, right?
No. It's about people on the field. So it's about product managers, service managers.
People who are close to the end user.
People who are close to the end users.
Although you probably also have to include senior managers because they have to endorse it.
Yes, and what I want to say, but still you need someone on board who can decide, yes, we go into that. Yes, we change the product portfolio. Yes, we change the service portfolio. Yes, we go and try and test it and go for it. And just now taking the shoe brand, and if you're maybe in a huge complex of stores, what's the question of people who are not that active anymore? They cannot buy a lot. They cannot carry the thing home. They are not comfortable to moving around with all the people and the escalators and so on. They want to have support in buying shoes. They need support in that, etc., etc. So you get a huge punch of pains what those people have with their shopping experience. And there's no gain. There's no positive thing. So question now is to say, right, I understand the users, empathize, and now I define a clear statement. How can I make my shoe branch that great, that supporting to really get my elderly people on board and to have a great experience for them? So this is like the first part of a consulting guiding project, to really have we are losing money and losing business, to nail it down into one clear segment. That's our job or my job to support in defining this, how might we challenge or design challenge, how it's called, to really have a clear statement.
I think what probably also happens in this process is you want to make a clear awareness of where are we in our mindset and the way we see the world, and kind of shake it up a little and see what can we do. I mean, an example that I would say, underneath my apartment, there's a Greek restaurant which is very, very good. It has good rankings, and
I'm looking forward to go there.
Yeah, good. We'll go sometime. I often, if I'm in a hurry and I don't want to have a sit-down experience, and also maybe cost consideration, right? You've got a certain budget that you have to work according to. I'll sometimes go to a Chinese restaurant, which is a little further down, and that Chinese restaurant makes a killing, right? They have theoretically 3 or 4 tables in the back, but hardly anybody ever sits it. Everybody takes it to go, and they make a killing because they have almost no overhead. All of their resources goes into production of food, which means it has an immediate impact on revenue. And it's located great. But every time I walk up the street and I walk past the Greek, I almost feel guilty. Because I mean, he can theoretically look out the window, and every time he sees that little white bag, he's saying, he got takeaway. And you know what? I often, and this is an example. I mean, I as a customer say, you know what? I wish I would go more to you, but you're not giving me that option. I've often thought, and I also thought about this during COVID, a lot of the restaurants that closed down was because they weren't able to shift from a real life presence to a delivery process. And I've often thought I should talk to the great guy down there and say, listen, you know what? You should offer, I mean, this is all residences around here, right? Some people who have a budget to work on, some who are old and can't get out. Of course, they're going to come to your restaurant, but how often? Maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks. Why not? Could you create an experience where everybody here who's close by, right, uses you multiple times a week? And I thought, listen, if you were to offer a cheaper menu that you can have a to-go thing where you could call, or you could even have a regular, you could set it up. Listen, I'll pay you monthly, and 3 times a week you deliver, or I pick it up, right?
So there are many options of
these are creative examples, and I think the biggest challenge that we also face on multiple levels when consulting people, our job is to kind of shake their brain and say, listen, you've got a great asset. Are you getting the most out of the asset? And I think it's tradition, I think it's status quo that keeps people from thinking outside of the box.
And it does not hurt too much now.
And they're afraid of, what does it mean if I change the way I think or the way I act? And in reality, we're not even talking about huge additional costs, but potentially life-altering and P&L altering possibilities.
Yes.
You know? And I think too few companies are willing to entertain that. And design thinking is a framework that doesn't give you creativity. It isn't creative for you, but if you're open to it, and you have maybe a little bit of a mentor or coach that helps you,
Yes. It's a structure. It's a guideline.
It can shake you a little bit and say, "Hey, listen, what you have this saying about the box?
Yeah, don't think out of the box. Think like there is no box.
Yeah.
So really,
So you
be open.
You talked about this preliminary stage. This preliminary stage is actually a stage that would happen before projects, right?
That's before projects, yes.
Okay.
So that's
that kind of discovery and evaluation. Let's see what possibilities are out there. Yes. But you help formulate the problem and also maybe narrow down the solution potential?
Both. So you formulate the problem by already involving the users in there.
Yeah.
So in a very, very early stage where normally you would not even talk to users, you go to the fields, you go to the shops, you go to the stores.
You do market research.
You do real market research, a real one, and not just facts and figures, like putting up any ChatGPT, what's the trend, how do consumers behave. Just go there where the business is and really get an understanding.
I'm trying to remember who I talked to. I was talking to somebody recently about product development. It was a person who's been doing it for a long time, and they basically said what a lot of us learned in university many decades ago. He said, you know what, the key, and I think this comes from one of the big gurus, is the key to any kind of new product is market research. Before you do anything, you need to do market research. I think that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years because there was an interim perspective. So it used to be in olden days, there was a need and you provided a solution, right? The more we got into technology, if we look at faxes, if we look at internet, if we look at iPods, iPads, if we look at the mobile phones, cell phones, these are all products that nobody asked for.
Yes.
Right? So I think the relearning of marketing and product management was the client doesn't know what the hell they want. You just need to make a sexy product and sell it to them and they'll take it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that. Because the one doesn't contradict the other.
True.
It's kind of a crossover,
and yes, you need to have facts and figures, but on the other hand, it's about really deep understanding and building up empathy towards the users.
Yeah. So you start on a high level with design thinking. You know, like what product area or what service area we're going to go to, what problem category we're going to take a look at, what clientele, what personas we're going to look at, and then the further you go down, the more you narrow down. It gets kind of more into the project management when it gets more narrow. But you're still doing design thinking because you still have to on multiple levels. You know, you'll have the classic features and the epics and the user stories and the requirements and the features and the benefits, all this kind of stuff.
But not in this phase still. Yeah. So we're still in this so-called problem area to identify and to analyze, okay, what the heck are we talking about?
Yeah.
So coming from we should and we need more to really having a clear statement to work on. So for example, for a shoe brand, how can we attract people at the age of, let's say, 70 plus, elderly people who do have special needs to become customers and to join again and to be permanently our customers and to spread the word instead of who we need more business.
I think, go ahead.
No, sorry. And
You first?
No, you.
What it triggers in me is so, I think it's always good to link the concept to real life practices. I think there's a lot of businesses that are struggling. For example, locally, the formal taxi industry had a real problem with Uber because it challenged it from a business model. Real live restaurants have a problem with delivery. Banks have a problem with, do we have a branch or don't we have a branch, or do we do everything electronically? I think these are all examples of how, or for example, stores, our classic history tells us, I want to go to a store, I want to try on a piece of clothing, but Amazon has had such a dominant experience because it's cheaper, right? A lot of brick stores wonder whether they can compete with virtual, and often I ask myself the question: it's not, why does it have to be one or the other?
Yeah, true.
Because there's a benefit of having a store, right? I want to try it on, but if I have a standing relationship with a store, why can't I order online?
Yeah, and the question is, what other services can a store now provide? Just to not. The only services you can try it on. Yeah. But maybe there is a consultancy in makeup. Maybe there's a consultancy in which color type you are. Maybe there is hey, by the way, when you buy here your clothes in between, someone is going to pick up your grocery at the store and will deliver all the things together to you. So there are so many options to fulfill users' needs, which they do not express or even have thought about, or have a bar there and have a fashion show and drink a beer on the side.
I think we're confused as consumers and also as business owners. We sometimes buy into this concept. Price defines whether or not people buy, and we have to make it cheaper, and we have to look for our margin and reduction. At the same time, all of us have the experience of wanting to go to a place like the Apple store, right? We all remember the first time we went to an Apple store and we were blown away. I mean, Apple has always been a contender in the sense of design thinking. So listen, when everybody else says this is passé, they say, no, we're going to double down on it. We're not only going to give you a store, we're going to give you a superlative experience that you've never seen before, which will wow you, right?
And I can still remember, it was in September 2011 in New York. I bought my first iPad 1. And it was amazing. Yeah, you were welcomed by people during queuing. They offered you coffee, and then you had the chance to unbox your first iPad, and it was battery was charged. You just type in your conto data, your login data with the guy, and I went out and it worked. I had a working iPad which was fully charged. Perfect experience. Nice bag, by the way. Yeah. And that's exactly the go-to.
And I think when we talk about business models and you define your clients, and you define your products, I think what a lot of people often forget is your channels are flexible, right? Whether let's take a fast food restaurant like McDonald's, whether I'm in a hurry and I don't want to go inside, then I have a drive-through, or I can deliver. Yes. By the way, the countries that taught McDonald's that you can deliver are Arabic countries because that's part of their culture, right? Okay. In Istanbul, most McDonald's is delivered by motorcycle drivers, right? So if you have the attitude, I know who my client is, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to offer them multiple channels by which, whether it's online, whether it's in person, I don't care how you do my business, but I'm going to provide those channels. It's part of the design thinking playbook, right?
Because every channel now fulfills the need of a certain persona.
With different benefits.
With different benefits, of course. Yeah. Yes. And yes, of course, there's nothing wrong with, we just have to go with the price, because there are a lot of people around who need to, turn every euro twice before you spend it. Yes, of course, then their price matters. And yes, of course, maybe then it's cheaper to buy online and the clothes, maybe. But then still there's a certain target group. And for the others say, yes, I want to get service, I want to get experience, I want to get a wow effect. Yeah.
So, but design thinking doesn't say that one process of delivery is superior to the other. I think it just entertains. So if we're going to talk about service, sometimes you want fast food.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you want superior food, right?
Yeah. And sometimes I want just to get some experience. Like McDonald's now had one of the first, I think, where you had these order screens.
Yeah.
And I remember it was cool. Yeah, I want extra ham, and I want this, and I want that, and beside of this. You would never ever done that to a person standing in front of the counter, telling him or her, I want double cheese, I want this instead of that. But now you're just 5 minutes in front of the screen. You can design, play around, and you pay double at the end of the day because you would never have done that. So yes, that's also design experience. It's about an experience. It's about the gamification in this case. It's about
Explain gamification, because I think everybody hears it and they have an idea. But what's the concept behind gamification?
Hard to say. This is concept. Main idea is to have fun and to have I want to get more. I want
a different experience.
I want to play around with this.
Yeah. So before gamification, Vienna is one of the first places that coffee was introduced into Western Europe through the Turks. They came to visit us twice. A long time ago, almost 500 years ago and 400 years ago. And they left when they didn't manage to conquer Vienna, they left some of their goods behind. And that's how one of the reasons why coffee was introduced into Europe. There was also over Spain and other areas. So one of the traditions in Austrian culture is the coffee house culture, right? Which has a very particular user experience, right? Yes. Foreign to a lot of Americans. The waiter's not going to get on your nerves and ask you, do you want anything else, or are you ready to pay the bill and get the hell out? It's not about turnover.
You can read the newspapers for hours just with a Einspänner or a Mokka.
So when Starbucks came to Austria, a lot of people said they don't stand a chance, right? But they did, because they offered a new experience. It didn't kill coffee houses.
No.
But it offered an alternative, right?
Yes.
So that's also maybe understanding, if you're looking from a user experience, there's a new generation out there. They travel. They went to Starbucks in New York. They thought it was cool. Actually, quite honestly, I think, and if you ask somebody from Starbucks what they sell, they won't say coffee.
No, it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's a customer experience. You know, the whole, as silly as it sounds,
writing the name on your
misspelling it, or whatever it is, and but also they have very systems restaurant management oriented. They realize that, you know, if you're looking at the value chain, right, there's productive and non-productive time. And the non-productive time between you ordering and waiting for the order to be fulfilled, how am I going to keep you busy, right? Well, number one, they offer wireless LAN so you can do your brainwashing thing, or I've got food, right? Yeah. I thought you sell coffee. We'll sell whatever you're willing to buy. Yes. Quite honestly, if they thought that it would make sense to sell socks, they would sell socks.
Actually, I think they did.
Did they?
I'm not sure. I think it's like this winter edition.
Yeah. So that's it's about consciously not only having this transactional thing. I got a product, it costs this much, buy it or leave it.
Yes.
It's about, listen, let's have an interaction. What
really makes you...
Yeah. What tickles you? What keeps you coming back, right? Yeah.
And the cool thing is, it's design thinking not only works with the customers, it also works with employees. Okay, because
it can be faced outwards and inwards.
Because a lot of, we call it in German Fachkräftemangel.
Yeah.
It's a nice German word,
yeah.
Fachkräftemangel.
Yeah.
So I think in English it's like a lack of experienced workers. Yeah, actually at the end of the day. And yes, especially in Austria, there are a lot of companies, some in the countryside, who are still producing something. You have no chance to work online. I cannot produce some goods online. Just doesn't work. And still the question is, yes, I need to get people to go there to work. And still question is how to become an attractive employer to get people and to hold the existing
to create a win-win situation.
Create a win-win situation. Okay, and yes, of course, there's a kind of safety and salary and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, if you look at the employees, and again, there's also different types of, they have to go there by car. They have no time to do shopping. They have no time to do the service for the car. They have no time to change the winter tires. They have no time to go to the laundry. They have no place to deliver the Amazon or delivery packages. So yes, there are some needs of the employees who on first glance has nothing to do with the organization as such. This is just daily life issues. Okay, perfect. Why not combine and have a mobile car service twice a year? A monthly, I repair your bike, bring your bikes and get it repaired and freshed up.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yes, you can deliver your Amazon packages and our guy at the is going to collect them. Why not?
what do you think is the main resistance to this level of creativity in the market right now? Because I think you would agree that if you look at many industries, I think they're struggling with their creativity. Everybody wants to be innovative, but nobody knows how.
Yes, they want to be innovative, and then they hire a senior innovation manager and think, now we're innovative. That's not. It's a cultural thing. Okay, it never worked like this.
We've never done it that way before.
This is not our industry. We cannot do that. It doesn't fit to our image. This is one reason, and I think the other one is that the fear of the amount and the effort to change something. We have to adopt, we have to change processes, we have to do something. And that's not design thinking. Design thinking means fast prototyping, easygoing solutions, just test it.
I think what also helps is if you travel international and you're experienced to different cultures, you see what new alternatives there are. I think big contrast between the United States. In the United States, you have 24/7 access to services, right? You can get something to eat 24 hours a day. You can go shopping every 24 hours a day. A lot of my American friends who've moved to Europe, the first thing they complain about, your supermarkets are closed on Sunday. By the way, I like what you said beforehand. We don't just do design thinking for outward customers, but our employees, whether or not they have to work on a Sunday is also a cultural benefit or non-benefit.
Yeah, but
right?
Police officers are working on Sunday, nurses and hospital managers are working on Sundays, tram is running. So
I'm gonna use a concrete example. I've always, how we generally often recognize silly status quo. I'm gonna give you an example. For example, car dealerships, right? When do car dealerships have open? They have open from Monday to Friday. Sometimes at 9, sometimes at 10, sometimes at 7, right? They're open from, and then I ask myself, well, who are their customers? And where are they? They're at work.
Yeah, why not open on Sundays and have a nice
Why do certain industries not shift their work time to before or after, or you know what, we're not open on Mondays? Like hair salons, right?
Yes.
In Europe.
And Chinese restaurants.
Yeah, we're not open on Monday, but we're open on Saturday. Quite honestly, when is the best opportunity for a family to buy a car? Because it's a family decision.
On weekends.
On a Saturday, right? I mean, maybe you don't want to sacrifice Sunday, but Saturday, who cares about Monday? How much business do you do on Monday, right? And that's a real life example of, I think most companies stand in their own way because they're more afraid of the uncertainty of something new. They'd rather accept the crappy status quo than entertain something new because they're uncertain.
And you just said sacrificed Sunday. Is it still sacrificed? Sacrificed or sacrificed? Sacrificed.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people are still religious? How many people are still into that? Is it just because it used to be like 60 years ago?
Yeah.
We live close to Slovak Republic, and if you go shopping to Bratislava on a Sunday, it's full.
Yeah.
Full of people, and 75% have an Austrian license plate on their cars.
I go a step further. This is like deep dive design thinking. I've also thought from a different perspective. If you look at, for example, in the service industry, I worked in hotel business and restaurant business for a long time. So I still have that mentality as a consultant. A lot of people say, can I send you something on Saturday? Sometimes I say no because I've got something planned. And sometimes I say, if it's important, I'll work on Saturday and Sunday, right? But I'll compensate. If you look at if you go do a city trip somewhere in Europe, right? And you do the traditional way of traveling. You go on a long weekend. It's a nightmare. Yeah. Go to Rome or London or Paris on a weekend. You might as well shoot yourself. It's like going to
Thursday is a public holiday. Maybe you go there.
It's like going to IKEA on a Saturday. You want to hang yourself, right? In one of the closets that they have, right? And I often said, I'm surprised that we don't do design thinking also in our culture interaction. That we maybe, and it won't be easy, but to create a culture where the people who work on Saturday and Sunday have an equally compensation for it Maybe you could do one day of the weekend. Some people have off Friday, Saturday. Other people have off Sunday, Monday. Or that you might even just say, hey, listen, your days off are, I don't know, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. Whatever, yeah. Right? Now that's an issue from a deeper perspective if you have children in school. But what I'm saying is, we would do a lot for our economy if we didn't have constantly this Ballung, we say in German. This, everything happens on a weekend. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants everything at the same time. And the question is, are we distributing our potential of customer interaction and revenue and service over multiple periods? What about the dead times? Why is it that a store has to be open when nobody's going there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, true. And again, this is like an approach of design thinking. There is not the employee who has kids and family and wants to stay home on Sunday. Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. But there are different types of employees. And maybe there's someone whose partner is working in night shifts anyway and says, yeah, perfect. Sunday from 10 to 3, I'd love to work. I get more money maybe, or I get compensated.
Yeah, you have to make up for it in some form or fashion.
Sure. Yeah, or
this will be a win-win situation.
Yeah, or there are people still at the university who say, yes, I want to get some extra money on the weekends and therefore have time to go to university on Tuesday, Wednesday. So yes, again, it's about skipping old, traditional, it used to be like this, mantras and going towards an agile way, of creative way, of innovative ways to do the best for the users. Could be employees, could be customers, could be users, could be societies.
But what you said, and I like it very much, what you said is really, really important. You senior and executive managers out there shouldn't take this as a license to say, screw my employees, I'm going to force them to work whenever I want them to work, right? Because that's when the customer needs them. You have to remember, your employees are also your users. They also have to have experience, and it needs to be a win-win situation. So I think that's important. Now, we've talked about this philosophically a little bit. Mm-hmm. Let's kind of go into the framework, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, we know how frameworks are substitutable. You can replicate them. It could be 4 phases, 5 phases, 6 phases,
or even 8.
8 or 12 and a half and 3/4. But what we as when we're communicating and trying to create an awareness in a pragmatic, like, how are we going to apply this? Yes, they say that design thinking is an iterative process, but initially it's a linear one. What is the approximate sequence that has iterations in it? What do we have to, what if I'm going to say, okay, where do I start? What's the first phase of design thinking?
Before going to the phases, let's move a little part right. There are 2 main areas. Mm-hmm. So design thinking says there's a problem area. Mm-hmm. In German, it's Problemraum, mm-hmm. where you just identify what's the real problem.
I like the German word because it says it's a room.
Yes, it's a room.
Which gives you a kind of parameter and a focus.
Problem space, actually.
Yeah.
So where you really get an understanding about the problem, you go to interaction to potential users and you define a design challenge. Mm-hmm. So you really do market research, you work with the people to really understand what the whole thing is about. Second part then, in German it's Lösungsraum, so it's like the solution area, solution scene, where you start ideation, creativity tools, methods, you do prototyping and you do testing. And of course, those 2 big phases, they interact because what you test has to fit to the users and up and down. So these are the 2 main philosophical things to really have a problem area and a solution area.
Okay.
And then we have...
which creates focus and structure, right?
Structures and focus, very simple.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, we can make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 25, or even 365.8 phases. I'm a fan of dividing it into 6. 6
to phases. The power of pi, just kidding.
Could be, but then it gets a little complicated because of the spin of the Earth.
Yeah, right? Exactly,
I should think about that. So, roughly saying 6 phases, let's call it, yeah? So the one is called understand. Yeah. So to understand the problem, understand the key issue. So coming from we need more customers to what precisely does it mean?
Before you make assumptions, you should understand what the hell you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. It's about facts and figures, it's research, it's work.
Yeah. There might be some uncertainty and some where you don't know, but at least even identifying what you don't know is a step forward. Yeah.
Question is, if I identify what I don't know, do I know it already?
I think, in project management, we often talk about the known known, the known unknown, and the unknown unknown, which is dangerous, right? I think there's always going to be a factor of unknown unknown, which is part of why we have iteration and agile approach. or hybrid approach.
Okay, this we should discuss.
Yeah, a different podcast. Okay. He's telling me to shut up.
No. Okay, so first part was this understand phase.
Yeah.
Second, it's about called empathy. Okay, to building up the empathy. So really build up and connect and get an understanding about the users. Asking interviews, observing, shadowing, focus groups, be part of there and really get the problem and the pains especially. Third part now is to define. So really nail down one sentence. How can we solve from the persona? And we work now with personas. So it's a fictive avatar character, which really represents one part of the customer group. How can we support our persona in solving his or her problems? And why is this important? So for example, as an employee, how can we make it become the most attractive employer? And how can we solve your daily issues you have on getting your bikes repaired, your car repaired, and so on, and you don't have time for that? So really, first three phases. Understand, empathize, define. It goes on then into the solution by ideation phase, so to cast as many ideas as possible, which then are clustered. So do they support our problem actually and help get rid of the problem? And can they afford it? So is it easy to put into action?
So there's a trade-off factor, right?
Yes. That makes sense. Fourth phase, then it's about prototyping. So to create some easygoing prototypes. Sixth phase then is testing. Okay, to test and to check does our target group, our customers, our persona actually can live with this or not.
Okay.
And then it goes back and forward.
Okay.
Back, forward.
Okay. I would like to maybe, thanks for that framework. It helps me understand it better.
Appreciate it.
The ideate phase, because let's go back to that original statement. How often does the client really know what they want? Right?
Never.
Sometimes. Maybe you can dock onto basic pains.
Yes,
but the technical solution is actually often in the hands of the people who know.
True, but it's not so much about the client. So it's really about at the end, design thinking, talking about the users at the end of the day. And design thinking now makes a difference between customers or clients and users on the other hand. Because very often you use services, you are waiting for a bus in a shelter actually, and you're not customer because you maybe have not paid a ticket. You're just there.
I can think of a real life example. One of my favorite clients that I do work with, SAP, right? They have this dilemma. A very reputable company with a great product and a great services package that they offer for their clients. One of their biggest challenges is that it's primarily IT, and most IT people think agile. We're getting this. We're going to invent it as we go. And SAP goes, no, from an economical perspective, we have addressed certain user cases and problems in advance. We've thought about it 100 million times. We've developed products that are specified. Somewhere in the user experience, we've had to design a flow. And we can't reinvent it for every client because every adjustment to a complex system is exponential and expensive, right? So one of the classic conversations that SAP has is say, listen, we have best cases, okay? If you listen to us, you're gonna have to maybe change the way you work a little bit.
But it pays off.
And it's going to be a little bit painful in the beginning, but midterm, long term, you'll have a much more solid system. We'll eliminate some of the problems that you already have right now that you're just used to, right? But there's a little bit of give and take, right? That's something that I guess would happen very strongly in the ideate phase, right? Because even SAP will sometimes, from a very powerful client, they'll say, no, it has to interface with our internal system, and it's okay that we have to program some kind of connection, which is not part of the standard package.
Yes, so one of the ideas in the ideation phase could be, yes, we sell only certain number of products, take it or leave it, very black and white saying, yes. But in general, ideation means really to come up with as many ideas as possible. Realistic, unrealistic, fitting to business, not fitting to business. It's really about many people together, build on each other's ideas, and this spin of creativity.
The reason I brought up SAP is because you would think, well, if SAP has done this process 1 million times and come up with their solution, and there's not really that much you can tweak on it, A lot of people say, well, then design thinking doesn't apply there. And I would disagree. The design thinking is still there. You still interact with the client. But what you're doing, since, there's this famous saying, thought is not said is not heard is not understood. Sometimes when we communicate our needs and our desires, first of all, they're not very precise. We haven't thought them through. Sometimes as a vendor, you have to have patience and said, although I've thought it through 100 times, in our relationship, we're still going through the user experience. Mm-hmm. We can still use the design thinking playbook to go through the tools. Mm-hmm. And then when we get there, we can say, this is what you've identified as your problem. This is what you've identified as your potential solution.
Does it fit?
Let me show you what we've got.
Yeah.
And if you take this solution, it'll be fast and cheap. If you want a different thing, it's going to be expensive and slow. Yeah. Right? So that's a trade-off.
Which is in general not the best option.
Yes, but what you're doing is you're giving your customer the opportunity to engage with you, and they feel respected because I've been given options. I wasn't said yes. You didn't tell me yes when it was impossible, and you didn't say no when you didn't want to do it. Yeah. You said yes, but, right? So that's also part of the design thinking process.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a way of thinking. It's a part of mentality, actually. Yeah. It's a shifting towards how can I make my users, it's not about happy, because just happy doesn't bring any money.
Yeah.
It's about creating a wow effect, creating an experience that they leave you and just say, wow.
Yeah.
That was really, really, really great experience.
If a client or a viewer says, you know what, I have a medium-sized company and I'm interested in this, how would they could reach out to somebody like you? What would the initial engagement look like? What would the process look like? Where would you start with the process?
First of all, I make a short training.
Yeah.
Okay, to get an understanding. It's like not a big deal, 2-3 days. To get an understanding about design
Go
thinking.
through the framework, just kind of give the child a name so that people can communicate about the subject and have are somewhat on eye level when it comes to discussing individual steps and
There we go. Get an understanding about the tools, about methods, and also gives time for some self-reflection, and also like to give time for self-learning later on.
Yeah.
And then we start with the problem.
Well, I think what's good, and you and I do this very often, regardless of what training we do, we often make the seminar a workshop. So you can actually use the seminar as a first kickstart.
Definitely.
To start selecting problems on a higher level, right?
Yes, definitely.
So they can kind of, in the experience, say, this really works on real life examples.
Yeah, it's look and feel, and also train on checking out. Definitely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and then we start with the understanding phase. Yeah? What's the problem? What are the facts and figures? How can we set up a team that works on that?
Yeah.
Who are potential users? How can we actually plan and select interviews? How can we go forward? How can we get the ideas?
But what you're addressing here is really important. I mean, a client, if they really feel like they've understood it, could follow that process up themselves. But in our personal experience, we found out that a lot of clients need a certain mentorship, right? It's one thing to hear about it first time, but it's another thing to really get the feeling, hey, can I test drive it? So what you generally do is you have an entry seminar, and then you do regular
guidance and facilitation of workshops, and to have this outside view to, like, very often you're in your inner circle, no, this doesn't work, we never did like this, and so on. And our job then is to say, right, hey, let's give it a try. Let's go for it. Have you considered this? So you're also part of this creativity process, actually. So
one can actually hire you not just as a process expert who guides through the creative process. We can also hire you as an innovation manager, right?
Yes.
For those of us, and we both have to hear this very often. We'll often be asked, "What are you consultants in what?" And we're going all sorts of stuff, but primarily this or that. And they say, in what industry? And we'll say, pick one. And the people kind of look at you like, how can you be innovative in telecommunication and pharma? You're not an expert in either, are you?
Farming?
Pharmaceutical.
Pharmaceutical.
Yeah. Or farming also could be.
Farming I am.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical not. No, but it's about guiding the process. Yeah. It's about empowering and enabling that creativity happens. It's about selective listening or active listening and say, right, we can take this idea, maybe combine it with this idea, come up with a third one. Have you ever thought about this? So it's really being putting lines together and facilitating that seeds are growing and Yeah, spreading actually. At the end of the day.
And you have the benefit that since you're not stuck in that culture, and you can ask the stupid questions that other people won't ask.
There you go. I don't know what doesn't work.
Yeah, often we through simple and stupid questions have some of the can offer really innovative because we're not encumbered by there's no boundaries for us on a way of thinking.
Yes, and that's what I said. With think like there is no box. That also like existing rules and regulations and laws through this creativity process they are not valid. Yeah. Because maybe then we find a great solution and then later on find ways on how to still solve it.
Not only that, I also think one of the benefits of good consultants is they have points of references from many different industries. Not all of them translate, but some of the greatest ideas you can copy from other people. That's also a form of innovation. Yep. Okay. Are there books that you would recommend?
Yes.
Thanks. See ya.
So yes, Mark.
By the way, we don't owe shares in this book. We don't get paid for it. When we recommend books, we've either written them or we actually really believe, and we also think they're valuable, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, quite a good one is the Design Thinking Playbook. Mm-hmm. I mean, this series of Wiley's General.
Yeah, they're good.
Quite a good one. There's a German one. It's called the Design Thinking Handbuch, which is like the compendium of design thinking.
Yeah.
There's another one. If you just look it up, it's called Service Design Thinking. Okay. Because very often, the thing is, people say, right, I don't have products to sell. But the main idea works with services. Yeah. It works internally.
So that's really important. Don't get stuck on design thinking is not just about the product, it's about the service experience as well.
Service experience, customer experience, employee experience, onboarding process, recruiting processes, offboarding processes.
Quite honestly, you can include your executives and your senior managers in the experience as well, because if the bottom two levels work, it should be the win-win-win situation where I've got better revenues, I've got less costs, I've got less headaches, I've got happier employees, I've got less turnover, I've got less rework, I've got less quality issues, right? Okay. Classical question when it comes to new or relative, because this has been around for conceptually since the beginning of humanity. Formally, the first preliminary background of it was in the 1960s. By the way, a lot of people might ask themselves the questions, well, if it came up in the 60s, why did it take so long to become mainstream? Because that's often, it has to go through so many mental resistance until it's accepted. It gets past the critical mass. Is there a certificate for this? Do I need a certification for this?
You don't need a certification. There are a lot of trainings, of course, like we offer. And at the end of the day, it's also about designing your toolbox, because there are thousands of tools around which are all existing already. It's about picking the best tools on how to understand your customer, your user. It's about picking and selecting the best tools on creativity tools and designing the best fitting toolbox. That's in our job to support and guide which tools do fit best. So yes, there are trainings around. There are some universities offering some master classes on that.
I think we have a similar attitude towards certification. I think certification principally is a valuable concept, but what's more important than the certification is that you learn something and you know how to use it.
Yes.
I think
and not only know how to use it, that you use it.
Yeah. So the certificate is kind of an add-on, it's kind of the cherry on top of the cake. I think there's an inflation of certifications out there. Some of them are valuable. I think it's enough that you pick this up. The things that always comes up, I think hopefully we've created attention and interest and desire to say, hey, this is an important process, it should be integrated. But the question is, it's everybody's job and no job, who does it? Because my experience is when people say we should do this, my first question is who's we? Yep. So who's responsible for design thinking?
As you said, it's a very cross-functional topic anyway. Very often it's somehow either there is a so-called innovation unit,
change or business excellence,
exactly, like a staff position very often. Or very often companies start with a project. So they build up an interdisciplinary team from all different functions. They nominate one who's leading the whole show. And then we start with a half-year design first start project. And then step by step, it's going to be established most of the time either in HR or in organizational development or in the strategic department, to really drive the organization at the end of the day.
So what you're saying, it's like a football team, like soccer, right? There's multiple players, right? And you can have one designated player that kind of drives it, but in your experience, it's often a business analyst, a project manager, A product manager?
It's a project or product manager who runs it.
Okay.
Or also very often strategic people.
Yeah.
So that really are responsible to drive the organization forward.
My personal, and I have the same discussion when it comes to business analysis. My main thing I tell project managers is you should be interested in what happens before your project and what happens afterwards.
Yes.
First of all, it secures your career because your career shouldn't be contingent on when a project begins and when it ends. You need design thinking is important to get into those stages before a project.
And as you said in the beginning, after me the flooding doesn't work here.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's not part of the concept.
Okay, good. We have a tradition of asking my wonderful, lovely team if they have any questions. Rico, Nelly, do you have any questions?
And then we are still not done, but after the questions, it's good.
Is there a point?
No, it's
okay.
Fun one.
Okay, so the question from Nelly was, and it's a very interesting question, I think. How do you do the design thinking playbook? Because I like the word here. It says playbook, right? How do I apply the playbook to services or products that have an emotional component? For example, burial services. I don't know, the IRS when you have to pay your taxes, or I don't know, going to jail. I don't know. That's an extreme example. But can you apply it, and how would you apply it?
Yes, of course you can apply. You would maybe have a more empathic look on which methods to select. So maybe doing an interview during the burial, the ceremony maybe might not the number one method to do. But still you can make interviews afterwards. You can make observations. You can ask stakeholders who are part of that. And again, same concept and same ideas. There are needs and feelings, like at the funeral, being safe, getting good memories, but still not, I don't know, whatever there is, there are still needs, pains, and also gains at the end of the day, which can be used. And if we run now a design thinking project, yes, there are ways on how I can get those emotions and feelings and pain points.
I think you're mentioning the actual value of design thinking is the empathic thing. It just means you need to be more empathic. I can give you a real life example that I picked up recently from the internet. There's I think it's an American company that does specialty pet food. And they deliver, you can order online and deliver on a regular basis to you. And they often have the experience is that often the pet might die and then they're still delivering and they're still being invoiced. And this adds an additional pain to the experience of already losing a family member, right? And what they do is they've identified this as a problem and they make it incredibly easy. All you have to do is if you call or send an email, they react immediately. They reimburse you fully for the food. They tell you don't send us the food back for hygiene reasons. They're not allowed to have it sent back. Donate it to other people that you might know have pets or take it to a pet shelter. So it's for free. They don't charge them for what they send them. And then what they do is they send flowers the first time, and they also, in some cases, send. They might send flowers like on the anniversary or something like that, which might be over the top. You might say, "Hey," but they found out, and the question is, people who have pets are not going to have one pet; they're going to be reoccurring pet holders. Just imagine what this does emotionally to your users that have this experience. Are they ever going to buy their food from anybody else? No, because they and this is the key behind design thinking is there a human being behind the process?
Yes.
When I go to the bank, am I talking to an artificial intelligence, which is not sexy, or am I actually talking to a human being?
Yes.
Right? Is there somebody who cares behind the system? And I think that's a great question.
Yeah, and that's a great example you just brought, because no one would have requested flowers at the first anniversary.
Yeah.
But once you get them, it's a wow effect.
Yeah.
Remember first car you had and you brought it to your first service, you would have never requested to get it washed.
Yeah.
First time you received it, a washed car after the service. I mean, you paid anyway, but still it's a wow effect.
Yeah, and it's a little addition, add-on, which you might say, that's a pain in the butt. I have to binds resources. No, but just think of the experience it gives you.
Yes.
All right.
And I think it's the same approach with these emotional difficult factors as well. Yeah, it's about building up in their trauer,
in their sorrow.
Yeah, in their sorrow.
Yeah.
Like how can I support? How can I be part? How can I be part of this relationship?
How can I acknowledge and be respectful and without being too
pushy or
too pushy? Yeah. Rico, do you have any questions? He's good. Good. You had one more thing, or a couple of things you wanted to add.
Yes, because once we're done now with our content, we still have the open questions from our starting point.
Yeah.
How to make the best Wiener Schnitzel and how much beer we drink in the Schweizer Haus.
Oh, good.
Still open to discuss.
So do you have a solution, or are we going to have to do a reoccurring?
I think we still have 65.8 hours to discuss on that.
Good. So I want to say thanks a lot to our viewers out there. I hope this was an entertaining and also informative breakdown of design thinking. I hope we've piqued some of your interest. Like I said, we'll put the link to Xandi below if you want to reach out to him and ask questions. He'll gladly answer them. Or if you have a consultant or company of your choice that can help you with it, definitely look into it. I think it can add huge value to your value proposition for your clients. Thanks a lot for participating. Xandi is like I said, a long-time friend of mine and colleague. You'll be seeing him more often. We've decided that it's good to have a second host that can kind of shake up things and maybe loosen me up every once in a while when I get too serious. So welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Servus, oder?
Servus, ist ja immer gescheit, verstehst du? So, passt aber auf.